These stories are submitted by viewers like you. They claim every word is true. Watch at your own risk. My name is Sarah, and I was 16 when this happened. It was a cold December morning back in 2019. I woke up, walked to my window to look outside, and that's when I saw him. There was a man standing right in the middle of the road. It was perfectly still. He was tall, dressed in white pajamas and a light brown kurta. A white shawl was draped over him, covering him from his head down to his knees, almost like a cloak. His face was mostly hidden, but he was just standing there, staring at the bushes on the other side of the street, not moving an inch. The air was foggy and gray, and the only sounds were the distant barking of dogs and the cold wind. He didn't move. Hours passed. My parents noticed him, and so did my brother. We all kept checking on him from behind the curtains, whispering to each other. He never sat down. He never looked away from those bushes. It felt like he never even blinked. As the day turned into evening, my dad's curiosity got the better of him. He stepped outside onto our porch and cautiously shouted, "Hello, are you okay? Do you need help?" The man slowly, and I mean unnaturally slowly, turned his head a full 180 degrees to face my dad. Then, he smiled. It was an impossibly wide smile, stretching from ear to ear. It wasn't human. My dad's face went pale. He came rushing back inside, slammed the door, and locked it. We all watched from the window as darkness fell. The single streetlight on our road flickered on and off, casting long, spooky shadows. The man was still there, his figure just a silhouette in the dim light. None of us slept that night. We just kept watch. Finally, at 6 in the morning, just as the sun was starting to rise, he was gone, vanished. There were no footprints in the frost on the ground, no sign he had ever been there at all. To this day, my family doesn't talk about what happened. But we all remember that smile. We will never forget that smile. This happened when I was shopping with my mom at Kohl's. Nothing special, just a normal Saturday afternoon. I was looking through some sweaters, the kind that are always on sale but never quite what you're looking for. The store was busy, full of the usual sounds of shuffling hangers, distant checkout beeps, and kids complaining. And then I felt it. That prickly sensation on the back of your neck when you know someone is staring at you. It's an instinct we all have, a leftover from when we were prey. I tried to ignore it at first, telling myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe someone was looking at the rack behind me, but the feeling didn't go away. It intensified, becoming a heavy, focused pressure. Slowly, I turned my head. Standing about 20 feet away, between two aisles of jeans, was a woman. She had long, stringy, black hair that hung over her shoulders, and she was wearing a simple, plain black dress. Her skin was incredibly pale, almost unnaturally so, like she'd never seen the sun, but it was her eyes that made my blood run cold. They were huge, unnaturally wide open, as if stretched, and they were locked directly onto me. Black mascara had run down her cheeks in thin, spidery lines, like she'd been crying, but there was no sadness on her face. I quickly looked away, my heart starting to thud against my ribs. A faint, rhythmic beat began to echo in my ears. I told myself it was nothing. It was just a weird person. Stores are full of them. I went back to pretending to look at the sweaters, my hand slightly trembling. I could still feel her gaze burning into the side of my head. After what felt like an eternity, I risked another glance. She was closer now. She had started walking straight toward me, moving with a slow, deliberate glide that was somehow more terrifying than running. And she still hadn't blinked. Not once. Her eyes were fixed. Her expression was a blank slate, except for one detail I hadn't noticed before. She was smiling. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a tight, thin-lipped curve that didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes never moved, never changed. There were just these two huge, dark, unblinking orbs in her pale face. Panic started to bubble up in my chest. My breath caught in my throat. I began to back up, my feet clumsy and uncoordinated. I bumped into a display of graphic tees, sending a cascade of folded shirts tumbling to the floor. I didn't stop to pick them up. I just needed to get away. I glanced over my shoulder, and she was still coming. That same smile plastered on her face, those same horrifying eyes locked on me. I saw one of those big, circular racks of clothes, the kind you can hide in as a kid. Without thinking, I ducked inside, pulling the clothes around me like a curtain. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure she could hear it. I couldn't scream. Her voice was gone. I just froze, crouched in the dark, surrounded by the smell of new fabric. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying she would just walk past, that she hadn't seen where I'd gone. I stayed there, huddled and silent, for what felt like hours, but was probably only a minute or two. Then, I heard a slight rustle. The clothes in front of me parted slightly, and her face was right there, inches from mine. Her huge, unblinking eyes filled my vision. The smile was even wider now, stretching her pale skin tight. A high-pitched ringing filled my ears, and through it, I thought I'd heard a distorted, guttural whisper, but I couldn't make out the words. It sounded like static and breath. I think I finally made a noise then, a choked-off sob. The face just stayed there, watching me in the darkness of the clothes rack. I don't know how long I stayed there, too terrified to move, too scared to even breathe. Eventually, the face was gone. The next thing I remember is my mom's voice, sharp with worry. She had found me, shaking and curled into a ball inside the rack. "What's wrong with you? What happened?" she asked, pulling me to my feet. I couldn't form proper words. I just pointed, my hand trembling violently. "There's a woman. She won't stop staring," I whispered. My mom followed my gaze, her expression shifting from annoyance to confusion, and then to alarm. She saw her too. The woman was now standing perfectly still in the middle of the main aisle, right where we'd been. She wasn't moving. She was just standing there, facing us, staring. My mom grabbed my arm. "Hot, let's go now." She left our half-full cart right where it was. We grabbed our purses and almost ran out of the store, not looking back until we burst through the automatic doors into the bright sunlight of the parking lot. As we scrambled into the car and locked the doors, I remember turning back one last time, and she was there, standing just inside the glass doors, her pale face a stark contrast to the darkness of the store behind her, watching us leave. Her eyes, even from that distance, seemed impossibly wide. Some nights, when I'm about to fall asleep and the room is dark, I still see those eyes when I close mine, and I wonder what she wanted. Do you believe in ghosts? What if I told you that sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't hiding under your bed, but are standing right in your room, watching you sleep? Tonight, we are diving into 3 true stories from our viewers. Stories of encounters so chilling they'll make you question what's real and what's not. From a mysterious figure in a family home to an old hotel with a permanent resident, these are tales you won't forget. So, turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare to be spooked. Our first story comes from a listener who learned that some old houses hold more than just memories. Let's start with an email from David in rural Ohio. He and his family moved into a farmhouse, built in the late 1800s. They loved the historic charm, the creaky floors, the sense of history, but the history of that house was darker than they knew. It began with small things, doors opening on their own, whispers carried on the draft, the feeling of being watched when no one was there. They brushed it off as an old house settling. But one night, David's youngest son, Leo, started talking to a new imaginary friend he called the Pale Boy. Leo said the boy lived in the walls and only came out at night. He described a child in old-fashioned clothes, with skin as white as chalk and eyes that were just dark, empty holes. David and his wife were unnerved, but they thought it was just a child's active imagination. That changed when they installed a baby monitor in Leo's room. One evening while watching the monitor, they heard a second voice whispering along with their son. It was faint, raspy, and sounded impossibly old. Then, for a split second, a pale, blurry face flickered onto the screen, leaning over Leo's crib before the monitor went to static. They rushed into the room to find Leo sleeping peacefully, but the air was freezing cold. After some digging in the town's records, they found an old newspaper article about the farmhouse. 100 years earlier, a young boy had succumbed to a terrible illness in that very room. A faded photograph accompanied the article. The boy in the picture was identical to the face they saw on the monitor. They never saw the Pale Boy again. But even now, David says that sometimes, late at night, he can still hear the faint sound of a child's whisper coming from inside the walls. Our next story takes us across the globe to a bustling city where shadows have a life of their own. My name is Zama. I'm a single mom living with my 9-year-old daughter in a second-floor apartment in Johannesburg. One night I woke up suddenly. The room felt wrong, too quiet. I looked toward the foot of the bed and saw a tall, thin shadow standing perfectly still in the corner. It wasn't cast by anything, it was just there. I froze. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. The shadow didn't have eyes, but I knew it was watching us. Then, it slowly raised one arm, pointing at my daughter who was sleeping beside me. I finally found my voice and whispered a prayer I remembered from childhood. The second I finished, the shadow stepped backward and melted into the wall like smoke. The next morning, the bathroom window was wide open. We always keep it locked. Nothing was missing. No footprints. No signs anyone had been inside. But my daughter woke up crying. She said she dreamed of a tall man with no face standing over her bed. We moved out 2 weeks later. Sometimes, when we drive past the old building at night, I still see that shape in the window of our old bedroom, waiting. Some doors, once opened, never really close again. For our final story, we traveled to a grand old hotel in San Francisco, where some guests have overstayed their welcome for more than a century. This comes from Chloe, a flight attendant who often had layovers in the city. Her airline usually booked them into a historic hotel downtown, famous for its opulent architecture and its resident ghost, the Lady in White. Most staff just treated the stories as a fun quirk. Chloe was a skeptic, but that changed during one winter layover. She was assigned a room on the 7th floor. The moment she walked in, she felt an overwhelming sense of sadness. The air was heavy and cold, despite the heater being on full blast. Exhausted, she fell asleep, only to be woken around 3 a.m. by the distinct sound of a woman softly crying. She checked the hallway, but it was empty. She tried to go back to sleep, but the sobbing continued, seeming to come from the corner of her room. Then, she felt a pressure on the edge of the mattress, as if someone had just sat down. Her heart pounded in her chest. She was too terrified to open her eyes. She just lay there, frozen, listening to the heartbroken sobs until they slowly faded away with the approaching dawn. The next morning, she spoke to one of the older bellhops. He nodded grimly and told her the story. In the 1920s, a young woman was left at the altar and took her own life in that very room. Guests often report hearing a cry or seeing a fleeting glimpse of a woman in a white dress. Chloe always requests a different hotel now. She says she'll never forget the profound, crushing sorrow she felt in that room. A sorrow that has soaked into the walls and lingered for 100 years. 3 stories, 3 different corners of the world, all linked by experiences that defy easy explanation. A boy in the walls, a shadow in the bedroom, a grieving spirit in a hotel. Are these just tricks of the mind, or are they proof that there's a world just beyond our own? A world that, sometimes, when we least expect it, bleeds into ours. What do you think? Have you ever had an encounter you couldn't explain? A moment that made the hairs on your arms stand up and your blood run cold? We all have our stories, the ones we only tell with the lights on. It's a reminder that no matter how safe we feel, we might not be as alone as we think. The universe is vast and full of mysteries, and perhaps some of them are living right next door or even in the next room. Those were tonight's stories. Thank you for joining me and listening with an open mind. If you've ever experienced something you can't explain, a strange encounter or a chilling moment that has stayed with you, I want to hear it. Send your story to the email address on the screen. Maybe your story will be the one we share next. Thank you for watching, and remember to subscribe for more Tales from the Shadows. Good night, and stay safe.